Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 226 based on novel. So let's start. Chinmu's opening calamity sword clashed with the nine-headed phoenix. The power of these two great divine arts wasn't much inferior from each other. The sword of opening calamity sword pierced through the phoenix instantly exploded, having 8,000 swords each dealing with the countless divine arts in the nine-headed phoenix. Yet at this moment, the ancient parasol tree came smashing over. With flailing branches and sunlight bursting forth in all directions, the power of opening calamity sword withered from the collision. Qin Mu moved back and pulled out his sword. He executed Overlord Body 3 elixir technique, and 8 roars of a dragon came from his body. The vibrations from 8 voices of ancestral dragon instantly turned his withered chi and blood become incomparably thick in an instant. In Qin Mu's body, his divine treasures suddenly reversed as he changed the divine treasures of the God path to the divine treasures of the devil path. His spirit embryo, 5 elements, 6 directions, 7 stars, were all flipped, resulting in the divine treasures of the God path to be below and the divine treasures of the devil path to be above. The primordial spirit combined from his spirit embryo, and soul descended onto the spirit embryo divine treasure of the devil path, and stood tall on the devil land. The devil land beneath his feet was the 6 directions land that was formed by his spirit platform of the devil path. What was shining brightly in the sky were his devil sun, devil moon, and the 5-element devil gods that stood tall on the devil palace on the 5-element stars. The instant Qin Mu pulled back his sword, he stabbed out once again, and it was still the first form of calamity sword, opening calamity. The ball of light that was formed from their earlier collision swelled up once more, but this time, there was also black-colored sword light mixed within it. Streaks of sword light that were black like ink spread out from the core of the ball of light, tainting the ball of light in a split second. Both of their divine arts were nearly wiped out completely. Before the power given off by light in the surroundings could even explode in time, countless trees in the valley had already fallen. With the ball of light as the center of a circle, they collapsed in all directions. Pieces of mountain rocks floated into the air, and they were flying in all directions at an astonishingly high speed. In the light, Qin Mu moved back and he pulled his sword out for the second time. Jiali stepped forward once more and his hands clasped together. The phoenix nest on the tree suddenly flew out, as the golden rice straws and parasol tree branches rushed at Qin Mu. Qin Mu pulled out his sword and gave a jolt. The 8,000 swords suddenly combined and fused into one, transforming into carefree sword that was in his hand. With flashing sword lights, he came face to face with the golden rice straws and parasol tree branches. A kind of Dao charm that was close to the path appeared on his body, and the sword in his hand was like symbols of numerals that was constantly changing. The 14th writing of Dao sword. Dao nourishes the earth of all heavens, giving birth to all laws, and the whole world will return to one. Not even old Dao master of Dao sect had completely comprehended this move, and he had only succeeded in cultivating half of it. Even so, that incomplete form was already enough to be called the only god writing of sword skill in eternal peace. It wasn't because old Dao master didn't have the aptitude or comprehension, it was just because Dao sword involved the mathematical transformation of all things in heaven and earth. If there was a mistake, Dao sword couldn't be cultivated. And since the sun, moon and stars in eternal peace were all fake, there were incomparably fine mistakes in the heavenly cycle stars algebra. By using mistakes to comprehend the 14th writing, it was natural he couldn't do it. Qin Mu had also learned the 14th writing of Dao sword, and his attainment in algebra was already extremely high. The reason why he could easily comprehend the 14th writing wasn't because his aptitude and comprehension were better than old Dao master. It was because he had seen the star atlas from 35,000 years ago, and also studied the star formation that Founding Master had left behind to protect God Execution mysterious knife. With that, only then was he able to comprehend the marvel of the 14th writing. At the same time he calculated the method to solve the killing formation. When the whole world returns to one was executed, none of his cultivation was touched and none of his vital chi was exhausted. The power of heaven and earth was borrowed by his sword skill, and with the flashing sword light, it destroyed the golden rice straws and parasol tree branches that were flying over. He had executed Calamity Sword twice to break Qi Jiu's great divine art, so his vital chi was also greatly exhausted. The 14th writing of Dao Sword didn't have higher power than Calamity Sword, and was even slightly inferior, but to Qin Mu, that was the best choice. The power from the sword, golden rice straws and parasol tree branches exploded and Qin Mu advanced instead of falling back. Rushing straight at Qi Jiu, his corporeal body suddenly grew drastically, as the muscles of his body bulged. Countless fine sword light flew out from the carefree sword in his hand and transformed into a pig slaughtering knife. The knife was 5 feet long and 2 feet wide. It was like holding a small piece of a door, as Qin Mu wielded the knife. This pig slaughtering knife separated into two, and he held them in both hands like 2 pieces of a door. Qi Jiu moved back, and didn't get close to him. Suddenly, a pair of phoenix wings appeared behind him and slashed repeatedly. He didn't have much magic power left, and he had been preparing his great divine art for a long time. However, it took a long time to execute this move, so the exhaustion was too huge for him to withstand 2 opening calamity from Qin Mu and even block Qin Mu's 14th writing of Dao Sword. It was already quite a remarkable feat. Among the current younger generation in this world, he was definitely the first to make Qin Mu fight, until this extent. This power of his phoenix wings was not ordinary. Qin Mu came pouncing over like a whirlwind, and his pig slaughtering knife slashed up and down to have knife light coiling around his body. He executed butcher's knife skills, and his footwork was cripple's heaven pilfering divine legs, making him come and go unpredictably. The ultimate arts of cripple and butcher had perfectly fused into one on his body. Meanwhile, when Qi Jiu spread and folded his wings, countless feathers flew out like swords to collide with pattering. His sword skill latched on to every opportunity, as they rushed at Qin Mu's knife skill. What his phoenix feathers executed was sword skills, and what his wings executed was knife skills. He was truly skilled in both sword and knife. His attainment on battle techniques was no weaker than Qin Mu. The two of them fought fast with fast, and the 2 knives were sometimes left and sometimes right. His knife was like whirlwind, and sometimes it was like a huge wave crashing down, with the sun shining on the wave of the East Sea. Sometimes, it was like a long knife hanging over the moon, fast like a meteor. He overwhelmed Qi Jiu all the way, and forced him to move back continuously. Whoosh! The 2 pig slaughtering knife suddenly shrunk, and flying swords flew out of the knives like small silver fishes. They flew in the air and moved to and fro like lightning. These several hundred swords were like invisible sword skill expert grabbing onto the treasure swords, attacking Qi Jiu from all angles. Village chief's sword skill was also executed by Qin Mu. Qi Jiu gave a long screech, and the head on his neck suddenly exploded to split into 9 heads. The plumes on his 9 heads shook and balls of light instantly shone down, hitting the flying swords off the sky. Qi Jiu's 9 heads pecked down, and Qin Mu's knife was 1 vertical and 1 horizontal. Right as they were about to slash down on the phoenix heads, Qi Jiu suddenly welcomed it with his wings. Qin Mu's pig slaughter knives slashed on his wings, and were embedded in his bones, unable to be pulled out. Qi Jiu's phoenix heads first pecked down, before aiming straight down on Qin Mu's chest. The beaks opened up and balls of light were accumulating. Qin Mu suddenly pulled out his knives, and 1 knife slashed the throat, while the other slashed into the phoenix's mouth. Meanwhile, The two pig-slaughtering knives that was embedded in Qijui's wings had become two flying swords that still remained embedded there. These two pig-slaughtering knives were formed by 8,000 swords, and they were originally individual bodies to begin with. What was embedded in Qijui's wings were the blades of two swords. Leaving behind these two swords, the other flying swords can still be used to form two pig-slaughtering knives. The throat that got hit by the knife was suddenly pulled back by Qijui to suppress the body of this knife, making it unable to sever his throat. At the same time, this beak shut to bite down on the blade of the other knife. Qin Mu pulled his knives out again, and Qijui could only bite onto a flying sword. He saw the two knives of Qin Mu slashing over at another beak and head of his, and it was literally following a set pattern, slashing towards his second neck and head. Qijui had no choice but to open his mouth to bite onto the knife and used his neck to brace the knife. Qin Mu pulled out his knives and left another two flying swords in his wound. He still slashed his two pig-slaughtering knives to his third head and third neck. Qijui was furious. Would you cut it out already? Even when he said so, he had no choice but to bite the knife again and use his neck to lock the pig-slaughtering knife. Qin Mu pulled his knives out again and left the swords behind, slashing towards his fourth head and fourth neck. Qijui clenched his sharp claws in anger, and his four heads were all bloody. It would be lying if he said it wasn't painful. The pain coming from all four heads struck deep into his soul and right down to his bone marrows. Qin Mu pulled out the knives and cut him off, slashing again for the fifth time. Qijui's fury couldn't be contained, and he bit down on the knife again. Qin Mu pulled out his knives again, and even though Qijui couldn't resist his anger, he could only bite the knife once more. In an instant, all 8 phoenix heads and necks of Qijui were hanging with swords. The one with the surname Qin, you have infuriated me. Don't underestimate the paths, skills and divine arts of the celestial heavens. Cry of the phoenix in 9 heavens. The last phoenix head of Qijui cried out, and the phoenix cry reached straight into the sky. The cry of the phoenix bounced back and forth in the sky and transformed into a cloud. Next, God's voice began to reverberate in the clouds as though there were tens of thousands of gods chanting. With the blessing of 10,000 gods, rays of light shone down onto Qijui's body from that cloud. Qijui was covered with golden light, and that last phoenix head pecked down. Qin Mu did the same thing and Qijui didn't dodge at all. He faced his knife light head-on and his beak was split open and the blood vessels on his neck were severed. Yet, the golden light that scattered on his body allowed him to take Qin Mu's knife down by brute force, stabbing his beak fiercely into Qin Mu's chest. Qin Mu flew back and tumbled on the ground. He propped himself with his knife and stopped. Qijui was covered entirely in gold and he flapped his wings to fly over. His 9 heads shook and the flying swords fell to the ground. The 9-headed phoenix gradually returned to his human form and the golden wings behind his body had also vanished. Qin Fengqing, fix. Qijui sneered and raised up a mirror to shine at Qin Mu. He said indifferently, the son of Yudu sealed by earth count, do you really think I'm not your match? I'm merely following orders to seize you and not take your life. Instead, I should shatter your seal and release the true you. This mirror is made by Black Deity, who controls the heavens in the north of the celestial heavens. It is specially used to fix you in place. You aren't bad to have injured me. Fix me in place. Let me take a look. Qin Mu stretched his hands out to grab at this mirror, and Qijui was astonished. The mirror was seized from his hands, and what came towards him was a huge sparkling clean knife that slashed on his head. Qijui felt pain, and his brain was almost shattered with one knife. He had no choice but to reveal his true form, which was a 9-headed phoenix. On each head hung a pig slaughter knife that was probably already shattered into his brain. Jiali flapped his wings and wanted to escape, yet Qin Mu was a step faster and had already jumped onto his back. As he punched this 9-headed phoenix, he connected all his strikes and caused the feathers to fly all around. Below, an injured Jiali walked over with quick steps and picked up the small case. He revealed a look of delight, but when he looked up and saw Qin Mu riding the phoenix, he couldn't help showing an astonished look. Brother Qin is truly powerful. To be able to suppress Jiali, his abilities are indeed a line higher than mine. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. I'm then the oriole. Now the case is in my hands. My God execution mysterious knife will be able to bring my knife skills one more step forward, right? Jiali's gaze flickered. He examined the case and tried to open the small case, but the gap was tightly sealed. There was no place to pry open the case. Even if he used his demon knife to slash, he couldn't leave any mark. Cold sweat broke out on Jiali's forehead, as he tried all kinds of divine arts to break the seal. He even used the divine arts of the devil path that Fu Riluo had taught him once, and he still couldn't open the case. He raised his head and saw phoenix feathers floating down the air like falling leaves in autumn. However, they weren't withered leaves, they were blood-red maple leaves. Qin Mu was riding Jiali in the air and plucking his feathers, beating him until he was completely covered in blood. Jiali was also extremely fierce. Even though he had gotten slashed on his 9 heads, he twisted his neck over to spew out trails of mysterious lights to slash at Qin Mu. Qin Mu just focused on hammering him, and the pig-slaughtering knife on the phoenix head suddenly flew out, leaving only 9 flying swords still stuck in the heads. The other flying swords executed sword treading mountains and river, forming a painting of mountains and rivers in front of Qin Mu, allowing the 9 heads to strike freely. The painting didn't break at all. Qin Mu's hammering was simply too ruthless. He didn't purely use corporeal body divine arts, instead, he used divine arts like yin-yang heaven flipping hands, and 5 thunder heaven raising bell. Tens of thousand stars even appeared behind him from time to time, as he executed great overarching heavenly stars palm force. Any kind of divine arts was like mountains splitting apart, and it wasn't only divine arts of the God path. Qin Mu would even execute strange and sinister divine arts of the devil path from time to time. Even though the power wasn't as strong as the divine arts of the God path, and the reason should be, because he didn't spend too much effort on the divine art. The divine arts of the devil path could target Jiali's corporeal body and corrode his corporeal body, corrode his primordial spirit, and hugely weaken the resistance of his corporeal body. This was the most terrifying. Jiali saw all of these and he couldn't help shuddering. If these divine arts from Qin Mu hit his body, his flesh would probably split open, and his primordial spirit would probably be destroyed in just a few moves. His corporeal body would probably turn into mush. Jiali didn't even die after getting beaten up like this. He's indeed stronger than me. His corporeal body has a kind of strange self-repair ability for him to last even longer. However, he would be beaten to death by Qin Mu not long later. If Jiali die and I can't open this case to get God execution mysterious knife, the next one Qin Mu would kill will be. Jiali took in a deep breath and soared into the air. He pulled out the demon knife from his back and threw it into the air. The demon knife suddenly vibrated in the air and a huge demonic eye appeared behind it. With the appearance of this demon eye, knife light shone into this eye and knife light instantly filled the whole sky, flooding toward Qin Mu and Jiali. His long knife was broad and powerful. Jiali's knife skills were different from Butcher's 9 skills of heaven knife. 9 skills of heaven knife walked the righteous path, and it wasn't proficient in calculation. However, it sought an overwhelming, righteous and boundless power, transforming the brilliance of literary hero into knife light to execute them out. Jiali's knife skill was mostly inherited from Luo Wushuang, whose knife skills was skilled in calculation. It was slightly similar to Dao Sec's Dao Sword, however. Dao Sword used algebra to calculate the Great Dao, while Divine Knife Luo's knife skills used rules to establish the Great Dao. This was the biggest difference between the two. Jiali raised his knife and he laughed. Senior brothers, let's just forget today's matter. Let me help to resolve both of your conflicts. We are all residing together in a different star, so we should get along and think of a way to leave. Why are we fighting among one another? Even though he had said so, his knife skill didn't have any intention of stopping the conflict. Most of the power from the knife skill was placed on Qin Mu's body, and the knife light that landed in Qi Jui stopped when it was enough. After all, Qi Jui was severely injured. If he gave him another knife, he might not be able to withstand it. On the other hand, Qin Mu was still vigorous, so he needed to beat down Qin Mu and make him fall back by showing him trouble. His knife light rushed over, and Qin Mu immediately stretched out his hand to take a grab. The paintings of mountains and rivers formed by sword-treading mountains and rivers instantly shrunk towards his hand and transformed into a sword pellet. Qin Mu swung his sword, and from the sword pellet was a sword light that was as thick as a bucket. The sword pillar faced the demon knife, and Qin Mu was thrown off from the collision. He flew backward and left the back of Qi Jui. He had used several great divine arts repeatedly, and all kinds of divine arts scattered down like rain. He didn't have much vital qi left, and he couldn't face off with Jiali. Jiali gave an internal sigh when he didn't kill him with one knife. He kept the knife light that filled the sky. Tens of thousands of knife light combined and transformed back into a demon knife to fly back. It sheathed itself in the knife sheath behind Jiali's back. After all, Jiali was also just defeated by Qi Jui, and he was covered in injuries. Even though his vital qi cultivation left was much denser than Qin Mu, if they really fought, he wasn't confident that he could take down Qin Mu. Furthermore, if he could kill Qin Mu, he would have to personally face Qi Jui, and Qi Jui's abilities were also above his, otherwise, he would have been defeated by him. Jiali kept the knife back in the sheath and he said with a smile, "Senior brothers, we have to see each other frequently, so why don't we each take a step back, and everything will be fine." Qi Jui's true body landed on the ground and his body trembled. He gave a painful cry and gradually transformed back into a human. There were still 9 swords stuck in his 9 heads, and when his 9 heads combined into one, the 9 swords didn't combine into one, and they almost tore open his wound. Qi Jui hurriedly pulled out the swords. His back was all blooded and he had broken many bones. He shattered quite a few ribs, so he could only stoop his body. He was originally a handsome young man, with an elegant demeanor, but after this beating from Qin Mu, he was even more miserable than when he got beaten up by Qin Mu and Jiali together. He couldn't live up to that title any longer. Luckily for him, his recovery speed was astonishing, so as long as he didn't die, it wasn't a big problem. Qin Mu walked over and the 3 of them stood in a triangle. Qin Mu looked at the 9 flying swords and he asked pleasantly, "Brother Qi's abilities are strong. If you didn't insist on using the mirror to fix me in place, you might not have lost. If we fight for life and death, it's actually 50-50. Brother Qi, can you return those flying swords to me?" Qi Jui sneered and he grabbed the 9 swords tightly. 50-50. You are underestimating the divine arts of the celestial heavens. Brother Qin, can you return the mirror to me? No. Chinmu waved his hand and said, "You can keep the 9 swords first. I'll take them back once I kill you. Senior brother Li, can you return that small case to me? I have exchanged that with my life. Both of you had blocked the door with your divine arts. If it wasn't for my wits, I would have almost died." Jiali gave a dry laugh and he said righteously, "Brother Qin should take it back after killing me. How could I do that?" Chinmu's face was full of smiles. Qi Jui was also staring at the small case in Jiali's hands. Jiali's gaze flickered and he probed. Brother Qi's identity is respected and the position of your teacher is also extremely high in the celestial heavens. You should know how to activate this case. Can you tell me? Jiali coughed violently and spat out pieces of shattered bones. His crooked body straightened slightly, and the sword mark that Chinmu left on his forehead also slowly shrunk. This made both Jiali and Chinmu felt nervous. The recovery speed of this Jiali was simply too powerful. He was simply an undying body that couldn't be killed. He could still recover so fast while having such heavy injuries. The reason why he spat of the shattered bones should be because of the new ribs growing in his chest. Qin Mu was very envious. This kind of undying body was truly useful. He just didn't know if it was the effect of Jiali's Emperor's Throne technique, or if it was an innate talent of the nine-headed phoenix race. After coughing, Jiali felt better and panted heavily. Give me the small case, let me open it for you. It was evident that even though his injuries could help fast, it still took a huge toll on his body. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so tired. Jiali shook his head and he said, after this small case land in your hands and you open it to show God execution mysterious knife, Brother Qin, and I will instantly have our heads separated from our body. Chinmu suggested and said, why don't we do it like this, Brother Li, let us first get rid of Brother Qi. We can then study how to open this small case. With the intelligence of the two of us, we can definitely open it. Jiali said with a smile, if I believe you, I would be an idiot. The three of them were at a stalemate. Suddenly, a coarse voice rang from their back. You guys keep fighting back and forth, but have you asked me, the original owner? Return this small case to the rightful owner. Chinmu and the rest had a huge change in expression, and he hurriedly looked at the source of the sound. He saw Kai Shi, who was skinny as a match, walking towards them with legs that were like firewood. They were already not far from here. This executioner of Crimson Light era had 3 heads that were like shriveled up black tomatoes. His eye sockets were sunken in and his eyeballs were like dried up dates. The lions below his 3 heads were also wrinkly, as though he couldn't hold up his own heads. He was like a big prawn with 3 heads. The 3 arms on his left were propped onto one stick. He must have propped the stick to move forward with difficulty. Chinmu and Jiali had fought here fiercely and the activity was extremely huge. It wasn't hard for Kai Shi to find his way here. However, from seeing how much trouble he had with the rod, one had to wonder he had made his way here. After all, Chinmu had to escape for a long time before finally meeting Jiali. Kai Shi must have remarkable abilities, and that must be the reason why even though walking was difficult, he could still use some magic power. Veins popped out on his forehead, and he thought of another matter. He muttered to himself and said, it had rained. That's right, it had rained. Kai Shi had an appearance as though he could die anytime. He said weakly, after you left, it rained not long later. The heaven took pity on me and I finally managed to drink some water that isn't poisoned. Chinmu blinked his eyes and stood there without moving. Jiali were already gradually retreating and the two of them suddenly turned to run. Thud thud. The two of them crashed onto an invisible wall and got bounced back. Kai Shi said indifferently, there's still no person who can escape from my hand in this world. Yes, you are the first, you escaped, you should be proud. The person he meant was Chinmu, and Chinmu revealed an honest smile. Suddenly, Jiali threw the small case straight to Chinmu and he shouted, Brother Qin, I shall return you your treasure. The green mountains won't change and the flow of the river is endless. When he finished saying, he crashed into the invisible wall again. Jiali could only turn back and stand there obediently. On the other side, Chinmu's honest smile froze and he threw out the small case he received to Jiali. He said with a smile, Brother Qi, you can open the case, this case now belongs to you. Merely a dried corpse of Crimson Light era, to dare to go against the celestial heavens, let me kill him. Jiali gave a faint smile and his fingers moved up and down. Runes flowed out continuously from his 10 fingers as he tried to open the case. After a while, his face turned black. He couldn't open this case at all. The case that contained God Execution mysterious knife in the celestial heavens also had a seal. He knew the arrangement of the runes for that case, but the rune arrangement needed to open this case that had come from Crimson Light era was obviously different from the one in the celestial heavens. The corners of Jiali's eyes twitched and he looked at Qin Mu in despair. Qin Mu looked up in the sky and his feet tapped on the ground as he pretended to admire the clouds in the sky. Jiali looked at Jiali helplessly, and Jiali looked at his own fingernails seriously before biting the nail on his thumb. Jiali looked at the 3-headed and 6-armed dried corpse that was currently walking towards him. He suddenly had a flash of inspiration, and he knelt down while holding the small case up high. "Senior, pardon my life." Kai Shi sneered and walked over shakily while propping himself on the rod. This case naturally used the rune arrangement of Crimson Light era. When you the runes of your so-called celestial heavens to solve it, isn't it just playing the lute to a cow? This case, you guys aren't fighting over it anymore. It's pretty lively to see you guys fighting over it, go on. Chinmu blinked his eyes and looked at Jiali. Jiali also looked at him and thought to himself. He must be thinking of the same thing as me, if he should also kneel down and beg for his life. Should I kneel or not? He was in a dilemma. Chinmu thought to himself. It seems that Jiali is truly my nemesis, to have thought of the same thing as me. No matter what, Kai Shi will take the life of all 3 of us and use our blood to nourish his corporeal body. He will definitely maintain his unflinching righteousness like me. So no one is fighting over this case anymore. Kai Shi sneered and walked up with the rod. Since no one wants it, I shall. Suddenly, a voice rang out. I want. A hand stretched out and gently took the small case away from Jiali's hands. Chinmu, Jiali and the heart of the rest shook. They hurriedly looked towards the sound and they saw this palm grabbing the small case away. Meanwhile, the palm belonged to a man who was carrying a huge axe and wearing a bamboo hat. He had huge arms, round waist, thick eyebrows, and big eyes. He looked like a woodcutter that had just taken down the firewood he was carrying, but there were very intense traits of a scholar on his face, completely different from his attire and manners. The small case that was in his hand looked very small and delicate. Saint Woodcutter. Qin Mu was delighted. Jiali was astonished. Heavenly Teacher. On the other side, Jiali, who was still kneeling secretly, raised an eye and he was shocked. The person who wanted to sacrifice Luofu heaven and forced Fu Riluo to have no choice but to sign a pact of earth count. He quietly stood up and moved back. He wanted to leave yet he didn't dare to. Kai Shi's 3 heads and 6 arms were withered and skinny. He raised his head up with difficulty to examine this woodcutter and he sneered. You want it? You dare to take it? Saint Woodcutter lifted up this squarish case and examined it. Why don't I dare to? You haven't even regained your cultivation, you don't even have your corporeal body. If you were at your peak, I would go somewhat easy on you. Now that you aren't, I don't even have the desire to fight you. Take it. He sliced open his wrist, and his god blood flowed out from his wrist. Kai Shi stared at the god blood flowing out from him, and he couldn't resist any longer. He opened his mouth and the god blood flowing out from Saint Woodcutter's wrist flowed towards his 3 mouths. Receiving Saint Woodcutter's blood, his emaciated body gradually bulged up at a speed that could be seen with the naked eye. Blood flowed in his blood vessel, and the beating of his heart also gradually became louder and louder. All of the withered organs in his body had their functions restored one by one. His vital qi grew more and more vigorous. His face slowly became rosy, and he gradually regained his original look. Kai Shi could also be counted as a middle-aged man with quite a look. The three faces on his three heads were exactly the same, having eyebrows that were like swords. The murderous aura between his eyebrows was very heavy, and it might be, because he was once an executioner of Crimson Light era. His aura gradually grew stronger, and he soon made the bodies of Qin Mu, Jiali and Jiali trembled. They had no choice but to fall back. When he had more or less recovered, the wound on Saint Woodcutter's wrist healed and it no longer bled. Your primordial spirit has withered for 20,000 years, you shall slowly nurse yourself back. Saint Woodcutter's gaze was always on the small case, he never looked at Kai Shi in the eyes. After a moment, he asked, Qin Mu, where is this small case from? Qin Mu said, Big Senior Brother found it. Him? Saint Woodcutter was astonished and he asked, where is he? Big Senior Brother has never appeared. I had found an evil dragon, that he was suppressing in a ruin in Great Ruins. I have slain the evil dragon, and the star sand in the cauldron of the Big Senior Brother showed me numerous geographical map. However, he didn't show himself. Qin Mu quickly talked about the whole incident and he said, the vicinity of God execution stage on this abnormal star was one of the maps. As I searched according to the map, I found my way here and found this small case. Big Senior Brother used heavenly cycle stars killing formation to keep this small case locked, and he left a difficult algebra question. I solved the question and discovered it's 35,000 years. 35,000 years. Saint Woodcutter muttered to himself irresolutely. Why did this idiot still have to leave behind riddles? Is he giving me some hint? What's the meaning of him leaving behind so many geographical maps? These maps aren't left behind for you, it's for me. He wants me to find the clues he has left behind. It's pure coincidence that you could find the geographical maps he left behind. Qin Mu said, 35,000 years ago, it's Crimson Light era. This senior Kai Shi is from 35,000 years ago. Saint Woodcutter nodded his head. I know, when I saw his 3 heads and 6 arms appearance, I knew he was from Crimson Light era. I have once found ruins of that era and discovered that the people of that era view 3 heads and 6 arms as the strongest corporeal body. They had remarkable abilities, being able to shift mountains and chase stars. This small case is also from that era, the shape is the same as the God execution mysterious knife of the so-called celestial heavens. I don't know who had copied who. Jiali didn't dare to speak, but he sneered in his heart. It definitely was Crimson Light celestial heavens that had imitated the God execution mysterious knife that our celestial heavens had created. Qin Mu pondered and took out the commander's seal that Elder Qing Huang had given him. Sacred teacher, Big Senior Brother had left this item with Elder Qing Huang. Even he didn't know what era is this commander's seal from. Saint Woodcutter took over the commander's seal and he examined it. He said with a chuckle, Elder Qing Huang. You mean Green Emperor, right? This fellow always has a bad temper and appeared to be cold to everyone, however, he is very warm-hearted. Did he say any bad things about me behind my back? Qin Mu hurriedly shook his head and he said firmly, no. Definitely not. Elder Qing Huang was very polite and amiable. He was hospitable to be and even saw me off, he didn't scold anyone. It will be weird if he didn't. He would have definitely scolded me, and even founding emperor as well. He must have chased you off. Saint Woodcutter threw that commander's seal back to him and said with a smile, I know his temper inside out. I can't see when is this commander's seal from and I don't know when was it left behind. You should keep it first. Hold it. Kai Shi's gaze landed on the commander's seal on Qin Mu's hand and he said solemnly, Let me see that commander's seal. I might just recognize it. Qin Mu looked at Saint Woodcutter, who nodded his head gently. Qin Mu moved forward and handed the commander's seal to Kai Shi. Kai Shi checked repeatedly and said, "This is a commander's seal from Dragon Han era. There are numerous ruins from Dragon Han era during Crimson Light era. I have seen these kinds of things before. That child, I will return this to you." This video will end here.